Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've got the pleasure of having John McDonnell. As I said, many regard him as the great power behind the Jeremy Corbyn throne. Very good to see you again this morning. Jeremy Corbyn calling for an outbreak of peace and love in your party. Now, you've come clean that you are seen as perhaps the more abrasive member of his team. Are you going to suddenly become soft and cuddly?
The position we're putting is that, look, we think there might be a general election at any point. Theresa May has said that she's not going to call an early election, but we can't trust her on that. So we've got to we've got to come together, we've got to unite, and we've got to be seen now very quickly as a government in waiting. And that means putting differences behind us.
But you have talked in the past about your sharp elbows. You said it was one reason why you couldn't really be Labour leader.
That's right.
But nonetheless, how happy are you putting those elbows in?
Well, that's what we've been doing all the way through. Even in the leadership campaign, at times we've got a bit vituperative. But what we've said is, look, harsh words are said in campaigns like that. What's said on tour remains on tour. We'll move on now. And the spirit at the conference at the moment is exactly that. People just want to get on with the job. I'm
talking about vituperative. You'll have seen Esther is here. You said some pretty harsh things about her. You called her a stain on humanity, and you repeated this call to have her lynched. Do you want to sort of take some of that back and apologise? Because it's not the kind of language you sort of approve of, is it?
I simply reported what was shouted out at a public meeting.
That stain on humanity thing wasn't reported. That was you in the House of Commons, wasn't it?
That was. And I was angry. I was angry.
But is that the kind of language that MPs should be using?
Sometimes you need to express honest anger. And that was about what this last government was doing to people with disabilities. And it was appalling, to be frank. And sometimes it is better to be honest with people about how you feel. Now, at times, in Parliament in particular, it means using strong language. But actually, if it reflects your honest views, I think it's better to be honest than it is to be, in any ways, deceptive in any way.
Well, Esther McVey, the Minister for Disabled People, is with me now. If you lose your DLA and you don't qualify for one of these new PIP payments, what are you supposed to do? Just go without?
Well, can I just correct a mistake there that was just said about the 20% cut? It isn't. What we're doing is measuring the growth because it had gone up by nearly 35% in 10 years. So we're continuing to spend £13 billion every year on DLA and PIP. In fact, it will be slightly higher in 2015-16 in real terms than it was in 2009. So I can get that right. And what we're doing is ensuring that the £13 billion we spend every year are allocated at those who need it the most.
Come to the question. If you lose your PIP, what are you supposed to do? Just do without?
No, well, hang on a sec. We don't know whether anybody will lose their PIP because actually you're talking about people who are deaf.
Well,
and for the first
time,
hang on a sec, for the first time ever, deaf people will be recognised. This wasn't recognised before under DLA, but they will specifically under PIP.
For people like Bethany, who was in Katie Razzle's piece, who don't have sign language as their first language, they may lose their PIPs.
Now, no, because we're specifically recognising it under PIP, which was not done before in DLA. So you're coming up with.
Are you saying that nobody's going to lose their DLA?
No, what?
You're saying that everyone who's on DLA is going to get their PIP, so there's no issue here. Nobody needs to worry.
What we are saying is it had grown by nearly 40% in 10 years, and we're measuring the growth.
What happens to people who lose their payments?
When they lose their payments, we have decided, it has been decided under the assessment, that they no longer need that extra money that would be there for people to help with. So what are they supposed to do?
Just go without?
No, because this money you get whether you're in work or out of work, and it is there to cover the extra costs of your disability.
Exactly.
So if you've now been decided that actually this extra money, you don't need it anymore, then it won't. It'll be going to other people. Well, that's
if it has been decided that you don't need it, then what are you supposed to do to pay for those things that you're currently using DLA to pay for?
Because
do you just do without them, do you?
Because what we're saying is, if it is decided, because this is specifically money to help you with the extra cost of disability, so if you don't need that money anymore, it will go to people who do. Because let's get this right. What happens, it's not a static benefit. People don't go on it and need it forever. It's actually a dynamic benefit. Some people with health conditions will get better. And so what we're saying, with medical support, with actually the body healing, a third of people who might talk about having a condition 1 year will not have it the following year.
So you think a third of people will come off benefits because the body heals? Is that your estimate?
Let me finish what I'm saying.
Well, you just said that,
some people's condition will stay the same. Some people's condition will get worse.
But you are going to
so they will keep it.
You're going to be reassessing people with degenerative illnesses, aren't you? What's the point of that?
Well, actually, some people, although there will be a paper assessment in that case, they won't be having a face-to-face assessment, because if we can actually diagnose individuals through the historical data and the medical data, then we will be able to come to the same thing.
What about people with multiple sclerosis?
The same thing.
Will they have face-to-face interviews or not?
Well, if you can analyse whether they will need the benefit through their medical data and the historical data, no.
Why does anybody with MS need a face-to-face interview? They're not going to get better, are they?
At the moment, as your reporter had already said, 50% of people have no corroborating medical evidence. They filled in a claim form, and what we're doing now is ensuring that the money we continue to spend, which is, as I said, going up, will go to those people who need it the most. We are here to support those people.
Let me bring you on to the bedroom tax, which, as you know, is affecting hundreds of thousands of disabled people. I mean, do you have any appreciation of the fear and the worry that you are causing disabled people who are worried about losing their homes or having to go without something else because they're going to lose £14 a week, which may not be much to you, but it's a lot to them?
Well, hang on a sec. What we're doing here is ensuring the £50 billion in the entirety that we spend on people with disabilities through benefits and support is going to the right people. And we're making sure that we are spending it in the correct places.
Yeah, but
and you're making assumptions
you are going to take away
people.
Benefits from disabled people, aren't you?
If they no longer need this,
no,
hang on a sec. If it's a child who actually can't share a bedroom with another child, no, they will be exempt. Pensioners will be exempt.
Exactly, you're exempting disabled children, but not disabled adults.
Well,
now, a lot of disabled adults have got very specific needs.
There's also significant discretionary payments, £150 million there, and should people need them,
the principle is that they won't get it.
No, the principle is that you're actually being rather alarmist. What we're saying is...
You're the one changing the rules, not me.
Because there is £150 million there that is discretionary payment to help all these people you're talking about. Should there have been significant adaptations, we're supporting them. Should you need an overnight carer, we are supporting them.
You're changing the mobility grants so that if you can walk 21 metres, you won't get your mobility grant. You won't get your car paid for anymore.
No,
if you
got
can
that
walk,
wrong as
if you
well.
walk 19 metres, then you still get it. What's the point of that?
No, you've got that wrong as well. No, what we have said is we were looking at it because there was confusion within the 50 metres and how far you could walk.
Well, you might well lose your mobility grant if you can walk 21 metres.
Well,
that's the point.
If you'd let me finish, at 20 metres, you'd automatically get it. However, if you could walk more than 20 metres, but not safely, reliably, repeatedly, and in a timely fashion, you could well still get the higher rate mobility. So I'm glad I've been able to clarify that.
Look, I put this out on Twitter. As you know, there are a lot of very vocal disabled people on Twitter earlier today to say that you were coming in. I've got a range of responses. I have to say, two of the most shocking, repeated responses are, how do you sleep at night? And do you feel any guilt about the suicides that have come as a result of changing the welfare system and the existing assessments?
I'll tell you how I sleep at night. And this is that we have done the biggest ever consultation, nearly 2 years, to get this benefit and the assessments right. I'll tell you how I sleep at night, because £50 billion we continue to spend. The UK are world leaders in the support they give to disability people, and I'm proud of that, and I want to keep that. No, it's a fifth higher that we spend than in Europe. It's more than double that is spent in America, and it's 6 times Japan. And we are spending the money we have most fairly, and we're doing a very good job at that.
What about this? Is this right or wrong? Do you agree with it?
Actually, I think that needs to be separated completely from welfare. I think the family there, it's a very tragic, I hope it's a
Do they have anything
one-off.
to do
It
with
is
Welfare
a
UK?
terrible situation there, and I would say quite clearly, separate the two. That was very tragic. The man and the family will be sentenced, and, you know, he will get his sentence both in this life and the next life for what he's done to those children.
Esther McVey, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
So just to be absolutely clear, you reserve the right, not necessarily about her, but to use that kind of language in future?
I think it's about making sure you express your views honestly and fairly as well. That's the most important thing. People have had enough of spin and triangulation. What they want is politicians who speak the truth and do express themselves, but there has to be an element of expressing yourself in language which doesn't go too far. I accept that, and occasionally I've gone too far, and I've admitted that. But at the same time now, we've got to be straight with one another. We can't have this, you know, people can't trust whatever a politician says because they're always saying one thing and doing another. I think what people want, and that's exactly why people have voted for Jeremy, is what you get is what you see. Straightforward, honest politics.
So this carries quite big implications for your own party. You're looking for unity, but presumably it doesn't mean where your MPs have an honest disagreement with you or Jeremy Corbyn that you expect them to shut up. So you will tolerate disagreements on policy, will you?
Of course, we're a democratic party. And you get the best decisions that way. Harold Wilson, I look back on some of the last Labour administrations. You look at Attlee, you look at Harold Wilson. Harold Wilson constructed a shadow cabinet of left, right and centre. It was rumbustious at times because you had really big characters within it. But actually, I think as a result of that, they came up with better decision-making.
So the control freakery of the Blair-Brown years, you're not going to try and replicate that?
In some ways, I think, I have a lot of time for what New Labour did, the real successes that they had. But sometimes, if you don't allow that democratic debate, you make the wrong decisions. And I think that's what happened under New Labour in a few instances. The most important thing now, that we have this expression in the Labour Party about comradely. It's important that we do it in a comradely way, so it's about debate around the policies. It's not about individuals or personalities or anything like that. And I think that's what people want now.
Now, a number of the more famous of your MPs, many would call them the heavy hitters, people like Yvette Cooper, who's coming on the programme in a minute, Chuka Umunna, for example, they have said that they would not put themselves forward for shadow cabinet positions. Is that a problem?
Well, it's a shame. Tristan's the same. It's a shame. I'd welcome them back. I'd welcome them back tomorrow. But take Yvette. She didn't want to serve in shadow cabinet on the front bench, but what she's done is she's led on an issue on refugees. She's done a brilliant job. Absolutely brilliant. Other people have done exactly the same thing. So I'm happy.
It's a different approach, though, isn't it, to campaigning, to have somebody like Yvette given, in a sense, a licence to lead on a very important issue, but not within the shadow cabinet.
I think that's the nature of our political party now, is that where you've got someone who says that I don't want a formal role in that sense.
When it's workable in your view.
I think it is. I don't want a formal role in that sense, but what I want to do is I want to lead on this particular issue, then we'll support them. Caroline Flint has just done it on tax evasion, tax avoidance, where she secured an amendment to legislation. She did it off her own bat, and then we gave her as much support as we possibly could. Now, if people are willing to serve in that way, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. They're making a positive contribution.
I mean, Tristram Hunt slightly notoriously found himself on a hit list, which I think you might have drawn up. What was it? Well, tell us what it was.
It wasn't a hit list. I'll tell you what it was. And I was furious about it, and that was justifiable anger from my point of view. And it was a good job you didn't see me at that point in time. What it was is a staffer in the campaign, because we were getting a bit of incoming flack from individual MPs, did a note of the various things that had been said about Jeremy Corbyn by different MPs, and then attached it to a press release without any permission whatsoever, and I was furious, because that was meant to be just an internal briefing, not to be used in that way. That then got translated. It wasn't a hit list. It never would be a hit list.
And just to be clear, therefore, Tristram doesn't have to worry about keeping his seat. You wouldn't be encouraging his members to deselect him?
No, I wouldn't.
And what about this issue of deselection? Because Jeremy was a bit equivocal about it.
I don't think he was. I think you misinterpreted.
Okay.
We've said, no, we're not supporting mandatory reselection. On the boundary commissions proposals, which I think are scandalous, I actually think they're not counting nearly 2.5 million people. We're going to fight it in Parliament, see if we can win there, if necessary, either in the Commons or the Lords. We're going to see if we can overturn it in the courts as well. If it goes through, the same rules will apply for the future as they apply now, which means sitting MPs will have the right to actually go into the shortlist and contest their seats. Now, that worked amicably in the past, and it should do now. The Chief Whip...
But the other issue, which is the one that the MPs fear, is that if they don't toe the Corbyn-McDonnell line, that you will encourage members to throw them out.
We don't want that. We want democratic debate in our party where you respect different views. We've got to recognise our tradition, and this is how we win elections. Our tradition is having a broad church, a left, right and centre, where you assemble a coalition, not just in the party, but right the way across the country as a result of that. And that's the way we'll go back into power.
And just to, as I say, cheer Tristram up, you're absolutely clear that if he wanted to put himself forward for the shadow cabinet, he would be a contender.
Yeah, of course. Of course. He's a fantastic advocate of policies. I'm reading one of his books at the moment about great cities. We need that sort of articulate expression of views.
Well, there we go. We've got an extra sale for Tristram Hunt. He'll be thrilled. Don't go away, because we've got a bit more from John McDonnell after the break. Well, back to Peston on Sunday. And the great news is John McDonnell obviously means what he says about bygones being bygones, because he's still here. Now, Allegra, does our viewer believe Labour's unity message?
Well, there's actually a lot of shock out there that John McDonnell wouldn't retract the comment that Esther McVey, also in the room, was a stain on humanity. A couple of tweets just here. So the first one from the Deputy Political Editor of the Mail, John McDonnell describing Esther McVey as a stain on humanity, even though he's saying people have had enough of spin. And then another one here from Kevin Schofield at Political Poll Home. How does saying a minister should be lynched tally with kinder, gentler politics? More of that maybe later, but let's just quickly look at Jeremy Corbyn's win yesterday. It was thumping. The problem for him, however, is that there are a few sections of the group, we're not being churlish, but room for improvement, where he perhaps needs to work harder. Let's look at them. So who did not vote for Corbyn? We have those people who voted Labour before 2015. We also have in Scotland a massive lead for Owen Smith up in Scotland. And then also people think that it's young hipsters that really love Jeremy Corbyn. Well, actually, in the 18 to 24-year-old bracket, Jeremy Corbyn has quite a lot of work to do. This is all according to YouGov, Robert.
Thanks, Allegra. If I could just pick up those YouGov survey results, and obviously, you know, you can't assume they're completely accurate. Do you not believe they're right? Because obviously
they got it wrong before. They got it wrong before. I don't trust them.
Okay, so you think, because the bit of it that struck me was the Scotland, where you absolutely have to do better in Scotland.
I think Scotland's right. I think of all of those, I think Scotland's right.
And why aren't you?
Because
why isn't
because in Scotland,
Scotland?
well, in Scotland there hasn't been the surge of new membership and enthusiasm that we've had in the rest of the country, largely because a lot of the younger people and others went to the SNP. Even on the left went to the SNP. So it's going to take a time to win that back. But we're beginning to. It's interesting. This week we won our first by-election in Scotland from the SNP in Coatbridge. Elaine Smith, used to be the local MSP, strong Corbyn supporter, ran a campaign there with the local pro-Corbyn candidate, and we won it back from the SNP. So we're beginning to see a gradual, I think, return, but it's going to take us a while.
Now, this is a slightly technical question, but it relates to the problem in Scotland. The NEC voted effectively for Kezia Dugdale to be the NEC representative.
And Carwyn from Wales.
That's right. But at yesterday's NEC meeting, there was an attempt to basically reopen that debate by Jeremy Corbyn, because, you know, he has a view that it should be members in Scotland who choose their NEC. Aren't you undermining Kezia Dugdale?
No, not at all. This is a technical thing that most people won't be particularly interested in, as you've said. But the idea, what Jeremy was saying is what we're trying to do is make sure if we're introducing democratic reforms, we introduce them all at once, and we introduce them after a fairly extensive debate, because we don't want people going back into their corners. And the issue around having the representative from Scotland and Wales, should it be the leader or should it be elected by the membership there or in some other form? Rather than bounce that through early, it would be better to put that into the overall discussion. But the members members of the NEC took a different view, which is fair enough.
Okay, but on this issue of democratic reform, how soon will we know whether the method of choosing the shadow cabinet is going to change?
The National Executive, my understanding is, I'm not on the NEC, the National Executive decided they're going to have an away day. It was planned before the conference. Well, it'll be in the matter of weeks.
Right.
Then what usually happens is they'll look through a whole range of democratic reform proposals, come back with proposals. Some of those might be agreed with the NEC itself, or if necessary, we'll have a special rules conference. That's what we did before.
But so to be absolutely clear, however, there won't be a decision at this conference on changing...
No, not on an NEC recommendation. Anything can happen from the floor of conference, but I don't think so, because
Right.
the general view is you need to have a thorough discussion, wrap these all up, and then come back and have a proper decision.
So Parliament resumes on October the 10th. The shadow cabinet at that point will still be the shadow cabinet we've got. It's going to take longer to change the makeup of the shadow cabinet.
I think so, but there might be others who are saying that I want to do a particular role. If they want to come on board before that, that's fine. Or there might be other tiers of the administration. People want to come back and play a particular role. That's fine.
And just to be absolutely clear, do you think MPs, though, should have a role in choosing the shadow cabinet?
I'm open for a discussion on it. I'm open for a discussion about whether it's MPs and members, whether there's a balance of that, or whether there's other forms of that. What we don't want to do at this point in time is preempt anything. As I say...
But so it's going to take weeks and months, so for the time being, Jeremy keeps his power to appoint the shadow cabinet.
It will remain status quo, and then we'll see how we go from there, yeah. The key thing now is to we've had it's been a hectic couple of months in the leadership campaign. We want to move beyond that. Members have made their decision. Labour MPs and the members of the Party Democrats, they'll accept that decision. We unite, make ourselves an effective opposition, prepare for government. We've got to demonstrate we're an alternative government. In the meantime, while these other discussions are going on, I'm hoping that individual members of the Parliamentary Labour Party will say, this is the role I want to play. I want to play it in this form, and I'm sure Jeremy will accommodate to that.
And just very briefly, because we're almost out of time, there's been a lot of talk of MPs like John Healey, Dan Jarvis, putting themselves forward for the shadow cabinet. Do you think it's possible that Jeremy Corbyn will appoint one or two of those sorts of people by October the 10th?
I think if people are coming forward and say, look, we want to play this particular role, there's a sense of urgency now because of the threat of a general election. I'm hoping people will come forward and Jeremy will say, look, do it in this way, or whatever. We can accommodate people now in the meantime until the decision is made about which of the long-term process.
John McDonnell, thank you so much for coming in to see us today, and look forward to seeing you again before too long.
Very well.
So, after that, I thought really quite enlightening conversation with John McDonnell. There's quite a lot for us to chew over with Tristram Hunt and Esther McVey. Esther, if you just forgive me for a second, if I could just pick up a couple of points with Tristram. On the one hand, it seemed to me there was a very clear and explicit call by John McDonnell for the hatchet to be buried, but he also was very clear that MPs, if they get any say over the choice of the shadow cabinet at all, we're not going to know about that for weeks and months. Nothing's going to happen fast. Is it possible to bring the party back together in the absence of changing the way the shadow cabinet is selected?
Well, those were good words from John. I am disappointed because I do think one of the things that could have happened today was for the leadership to say, the Labour Party has to have the MPs on board. We work with the members, the trade unions, the MPs. They should have a clear role in assisting with the shadow cabinet, and we're going to take that to conference as part of this rebuilding and this unity and take it forward. And they haven't done that, so we're into...
He's very explicitly saying that's not going to happen until an away day and then a special... So we're into weeks and months, aren't we?
You already know you're in trouble when you're talking about away days for the NEC. So this isn't going to happen very quickly. So I think that is a missed opportunity. I think what John said, though, about...
Very generous about you.
Well, I think what John said about members of Parliament fulfilling different roles in support of the Labour movement, not just on the front bench, so whether it's Caroline on tax justice, whether it's Yvette on refugees, is exactly right. And I think those people...
And what role will you be playing,
Well,
Tristan?
those people who do step into the front bench and the shadow cabinet have to commit to collective responsibility. And I still have deep political and philosophical differences with Jeremy.
So you can't join the shadow
No,
cabinet?
I would not. I don't think I'd be... I think I should have some humility here. I don't think I'd be asked. But no, I still retain, just as Jeremy did when Tony Blair was leader and before, real big political differences about defence, about Europe, about the economic strategy, about education policy. So what I want to do is to ensure...
How do you express those differences without creating the perception that you're a warring party?
Because, just as John said, the Labour Party is made up of hundreds of thousands of people with different approaches and views. And I think it's important that those who regard themselves more in the centre ground of British politics, the mainstream of British politics, have a voice in the Labour Party which says that, yes, we believe in social justice, but we also believe in economic competitiveness, we believe in wealth creation, we believe in the values that the families watching this programme, you know, getting their kids up to go to swimming lessons and football games and church and have lunch with relatives, they need a Labour Party which is on their side for practical bread and butter issues about public services and wealth creation and economic growth, and isn't just a party which is talking to itself about itself.
Can I just press you on one point there? Do
Yeah.
you believe him when he says you're not going to be deselected?
Oh, I hope so. I mean, I think Labour members, though, have a voice in their relationship with their members of Parliament. And if the members in Stoke-on-Trent Central say, Tristram, we've had enough of you, you don't reflect our views anymore, that's their democratic voice. What we don't want to see, though, is the kind of pressure and entryism and sort of wink and a nudge force which forces out good MPs. Here in Merseyside, we saw that a long time ago with Frank Field and the attempt by Militant Tendency to get rid of him. We're seeing worrying signs in Riverside and Wallasey, and that kind of aggressive, hard-left factionalism, John McDonnell has hopefully knocked on the head this morning.
Right. Welcome back, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Yvette Cooper. Yvette, I think it would be overstating it to say that you've ever been exactly a huge fan of Jeremy Corbyn, but can you learn to work with him?
Well, look, congratulations to Jeremy for being re-elected, and we should be, all of us, respecting that result. But we've also got to be honest, we've got a hard task for the party ahead now, because we've obviously got to hold together as a broad-based party, and we've also got to stop the navel-gazing and start building support across the country. And that means all of us, that means Jeremy, that means everybody else as well.
Tristram says he couldn't see himself working for Jeremy on the front bench. Could you conceive of working for him on the front bench?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I mean, right now I'm standing to be the Home Affairs Select Committee Chair, because I think with Brexit and the consequence that's going to have for the country for the next decades to come, there's an important parliamentary scrutiny role to be done there. But I think the thing that Jeremy needs to do in order to pull the whole party together is to show different ways of working. For example, to have shadow cabinet elections. That would allow a lot of people, I think, to come forward and to stand, but also some other things that I think that he and John need to do to show through deeds, not words, that actually they want to take the lead in drawing the whole party together, making sure we're broad-based, making sure we don't have good people be driven out of the party, making sure we can win back votes in marginal seats that we need.
Can I just press you on one point? I mean, you know, you are from a generation of politicians who believed that parties couldn't win unless MPs were all singing from the hymn sheet. Now, there is absolutely no possibility of Labour MPs all singing from the same hymn sheet in the coming weeks and months, and John McDonnell said that was all right.
Look, there are different views, and we've got to make sure that we're a broad enough party to have those different views expressed.
But can you possibly win if voters see you as divided?
I think you've got, well, in the end, the party leader has to show how he's going to pull everybody together. And that means obviously all of the voters that within the party who supported Jeremy in this leadership election, but also those that didn't, and the many voters, particularly party members who've been in the party for a long time who didn't vote for Jeremy. We need their energy on the doorstep, and more important than ever across the country, because obviously we're about more than our members. We're also about the hopes and the aspirations of Labour voters who desperately need a Labour government across the country. So I think, yeah, do the shadow cabinet elections, that would be great. And if John is serious...
But John just said, categorically, that we're not going to know anything about how the shadow cabinet might change the way it's selected. For weeks, well, months, actually. It could be even longer than that.
And there's something really important that he could do.
That must have desperately disappointed you.
I think that is disappointing, but there is something he could do to show good faith this week. If Jeremy and John supported the resolution going to Labour Party conference this week to allow shadow cabinet elections in future when the agreement is reached, let's get it through this party conference. It needs to have the support of party conference. So if they're serious, if they want to show through deeds, not words, that they're open in the way that John said he was, then do that, get that through party conference this week. That would be a really important way to pull people together. Second thing I think they should do is we've got to have much stronger action against the minority of people who have got this abuse within the party.
Well, I want to ask you about that, because you very much welcomed what Jeremy Corbyn said about stamping down on abusive language. John McDonnell said it was okay, because he was just expressing his honest views, in repeating that call that Esther McVey should be lynched.
It's not okay. It's really, really not okay. And people do say things in the heat of the moment.
But he should have apologised.
He should have apologised. He should absolutely have apologised. The idea of saying that a woman MP, as Esther was at the time, should be lynched, I mean, it was just wrong. And, you know, to be fair to Owen Smith, when he said things during the summer, he apologised for them, and rightly so. You know, people sometimes say things that they regret. Apologise for them. Because if you don't, it sets a climate of hostility and abuse. I want John and Jeremy to use their social media accounts to challenge people in the party who are being abusive. I want us to have much stronger rules, much stronger enforcement. Everybody says that, you know, Jeremy says kinder, gentler politics. He says that he wants to not have any of that abuse, and I believe him, but he's got to show it through deeds and not words. And there is so much that the party could be doing to deal with that, to pull everybody together, to be inclusive. That's what I think we've got to do now, because how can we stand up against oppression and bullying by the powerful or by the mob, as Labour has always done, if we're not prepared to deal with the minority in our own party who might be doing that kind of thing?
And just to be clear, when people within your party are abusive, in your view, that should make them unfit to be members?
Yeah, and again, it depends. Look, if people say things in the heat of the moment and then withdraw them and apologise, everybody's done that kind of thing.
So
but
just to
if
be clear, in your view, the minimum that
harassment,
John needs to do now is just to say that it was inappropriate.
he should apologise, absolutely. And, you know, we should have, if there's repeated harassment, repeated abuse, or you have serious abuse like racism or anti-Semitism, it shouldn't be part of the Labour Party. It's not our values. If we want to stand up for those values of a common humanity and equality and social justice across the country, we have to respect those values in the way we treat each other within our party. I want all of us to do that, every single member of our party, but that has to also come from the top, and I really need them to do that.
Now, you're going to hate me for this, but your husband is one of the most famous people in Britain at the moment, and not for his role as Shadow Chancellor and former Education Secretary. He's on the dance floor in Strictly last night. Were you ecstatic or slightly squirming?
I thought it was brilliant. I admit I was nervous beforehand, but it's brilliant. I mean, you know, Ed Balls, former Shadow Chancellor, former Education Secretary, he's done all of those jobs, and now he's learnt the waltz. You know, he's learnt to dance. It's brilliant. Now, you know, there's a lot of very good dancers on the show this year, but this is, as Len said, Len Goodman, or rather Len McCloskey, Len said...
What did Len McCloskey say about this?
I don't know, actually. We should ask him what he thinks of Ed's dancing. But, you know, Len Goodman said this is the spirit of Strictly. He's learning to dance from scratch. I think it is brilliant. He's having fun. We're all having fun.
How much pressure is on you? How's your waltz?
Oh, terrible. And I would really love to learn. And he's tried to show me some of the dance steps in the kitchen, and it's not working. I'm so envious, because I think it's just brilliant to be able to do that. Although there is a bit of a feeling of it's like, you know, he's doing the dancing and we've been doing the bake-off, and he's done the, you know, early morning piano practice. I have said to him before, it's like, it's a bit of a feeling of just this managed midlife crisis going so far. Just get on with it and get the motorbike.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you've learned the waltz, will you come back and do it on our programme?
Oh, I'd love to.
Fantastic. Lovely to see you, Yvette. Welcome back to Peston on Sunday. I'm delighted to be joined by the brilliant comedian and impressionist John Coleshaw. But just before we get the real insights into what's going on from John, Esther, we just heard Yvette Cooper saying that she thought John McDonnell should apologise for the way that he repeated those remarks about, you know, you needing to be lynched and calling you a stain on humanity. What do you think?
Well, I want to thank Yvette for that. I think that was good of her to come forward. But when we look at John McDonnell and what he said in the past, whether it's lynching me, whether it was assassinating Margaret Thatcher, whether it's honouring the IRA, whether he's talking about his MPs being expletive useless, this is a man who links violence with politics. This is a man who talks about the struggle through threats, intimidation and bullying. And he doesn't just talk about it, he whips up that culture, which we've been seeing, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook. The own Labour MPs, 50% of the female MPs came forward and said, can you stop this? 25,000 anti-Semitic Twitters against Ruth Smeeth. This is the sort of action that he's encouraging. So really, when you look at the threats...
You think he doesn't get it, basically?
No, he doesn't, because look at his words and his actions. It's about linking violence with politics, and then he has complete disdain for MPs who don't agree with him, whether it's in his own party or whether it's in other parties. No, he really has to think about his actions. I went through a complete campaign with what he did, the start of Momentum. Momentum is only the militants It's only the Trotskys, the militants, the far left of the 1980s. It is deja vu. I lived through that in the 80s. That is what made me a Tory on Liverpool, because I saw the bullying, the intimidation, the complete unacceptance of somebody having a different point of view. That's what John McDonnell is about, and that's why he can't apologise.
What does John need to do to persuade your party that he does understand that this kind of language is unacceptable?
Well, I think Yvette was totally right. A, there needs to be an apology for that kind of language. B, we want to see the leadership agree to that resolution here at conference about having elections to the shadow cabinet from the PLP. But also, as Yvette said, to make sure they use their social media accounts to ensure that they're clamping down on this. And it really upsets me, given the history of the Labour Party and the Jewish community in this country, that we're seeing such a divergence between Labour and the Jewish community. And we've seen this morning Parry Mitchell, a leading Jewish Labour peer, leave the party. Real fears over anti-Semitism for my neighbour in Stoke-on-Trent, Ruth Smeeth. We have to clamp down on this. And, you know, they're talking about a new start. Let's begin here and now. Stop the abuse, particularly female MPs. Stop the abuse of anti-Semitism in the party.
Christian, thank you. John, these are extraordinary times in British politics. Is it a great time to be doing what you do, or is it challenging?
I think it is. You know, the Dead Ringers writers in recent times have often been writing sketches in real time as events are happening. And as an impersonator, you do want the sense of new characters wafting in all the time.
Are today's figures, I mean, how easy is Jeremy to do?
What we play with Corbyn to start off with is that sense of underlying, sort of simmering and petulance, a slight wobble of the head, talking very quietly, but you sense that he could blow his top at any moment. That is tabloid journalism, like he did with Christian Gromurdy.
And I mean, unfortunately, we haven't got Jeremy here today, but I mean, if he were here, would you like to offer Yvette a job?
Well, that is for Yvette to come forward. We are going to come together and work together, and other things like that. Those sorts of sayings which I'm churning out. So let's see what happens.
Now, we asked our viewers who they think they would love to see more of you doing, as
It's just
it were.
fantastic to hear your voice, actually. It's just fantastic to hear your voice on Peston on Sunday. Yours is the only voice with its only Doppler effect.
Well, we didn't actually ask our viewers whether they wanted you to do me, but I obviously love hearing what I really sound like. But what we did do was we gave them a list of people we know you do brilliantly, and the person they love to hear you doing is Trump. Is Trump a gift?
I think he is. He's quite evocative of the George W. Bush era. You know, I want to
yes,
thank,
of course. You actually made George W. Bush the many, as it were.
He was a very go-to character for a long time. You know, I want to thank Donald for the direct way that he's speaking, but also I want to thank Donald J. Trump for making sure that by comparison I'll be remembered as an intellectual of the White House. Lewis MacLeod does the Donald on Dead Ringers and Newsoids. And, you know, it's that thing, you know, that hand gesture. You know, people can either vote for the first ever female president of the United States or the last ever president of the United States. You're wondering what a Donald Trump presidency will be like? I'll tell you what it's going to be like. You go out on a Friday night, you get absolutely drunk, you wake up on Saturday terrified because you forgot what the heck you did. That's what a Donald Trump presidency would be like for 4 years, folks.
Now, Boris Johnson, I imagine of the current crop, as doing what you do, he's probably one of your favourites, is he?
I think he is. Boris was a sort of a quantitative easing for impressionists. When, you know, you had David Cameron being, you know, very tight in that repeated sort of hand gesture, and, you know, Nick Clegg in this sort of way, and then in comes Boris with these hand gestures like that, talking in Latin all the time. I always refer to him as the only fellow outside with Beano who says cripes. But now that he's Foreign Secretary, we're seeing that other form of Boris, the well-behaved Boris, less movement, much more serious, and
That's all scary. That's the terrifying.
Yes.
And is Boris going to be loyal to the new Prime Minister?
No.
Well, I suppose he will be seen to behave himself for a required amount of time, and then I think maybe...
everybody needs a Boris, don't they, to inject life ideas, fizzing with fun.
He makes a great newsoid puppet with
Did you see him
knitted hair.
trying to concentrate at the United Nations when John Kerry was speaking?
What do you mean trying
and he was
to
sort of desperately
concentrate?
tried, like, serious face. I don't know.
The smirk was coming through at any moment.
He's trying to concentrate. He has a great intellect. I'm sure he can concentrate better than most
Yeah, but you
people.
could see him sort of, holding the bench going, can't make a funny face.
There are those moments where you do just see that look behind the eye.
Yes.
the
But
eye.
when there was the Tory leadership election and you were just thinking about your own career, not about what was right for the country, who did you want to win?
This brings me to Michael Gove, who's sort of like a slightly faster, speeded up Ronnie Corbett.
I bet you didn't want Andrea Leadsom. I mean, that would have just
Well,
sunk you.
do you know, Jan Ravens and Deborah Stevenson, they were observing her very closely.
And can she be done? Is she quite a...
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. It takes time for you to see the traits. With
But it
John...
wouldn't work for you, would it?
Well,
It wouldn't work for you with the lady on it.
Anyway, listen, that I thought gave us the best insight in politics we have for a long time. Thanks for watching.